to test this grant.
Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll, please?
Certainly. Director Anderson?
Here.
Director Colson? I believe he's going to attempt to call in, but at this time, no. Director DeWitt? Here. Director Durante?
Here.
Director Fraga? Aye. Director Fuentes?
Here.
Director Higgins?
Here.
Director Cotel?
Here.
Director Lewis?
Here.
Director McAllis? Director Melvin? Director Pang?
Here.
Director Ross? Here. Dr. Sager?
Here.
By phone with the necessary paperwork completed. Director Troiani?
Here.
Chairman Dillard?
Here.
We have a quorum of 14 present with 2 absent, and one of those present are on the phone.
Great, thank you. How's the weather in southern Illinois, Dr. Sager? I know you're down there working.
Right now? Yeah, right now it's right. We started off with about 55 degrees this morning, but it's all good.
Oh, that's cool for southern Illinois in August. Enjoy it. Thanks for joining us. Item 3A, which is our first action item, is the approval of the minutes from the meeting held on June 21st, 2018. Any questions or corrections? If not, Director Ross moves that we approve, seconded by Director Friga. Audrey, why don't you take a roll call on that so we have a baseline official roll call?
Okay. Director Anderson?
Yes.
Director DeWitt?
Yes.
Director Durante?
Aye.
Director Fraga?
Aye.
Director Fuentes?
Aye.
Director Higgins?
Aye.
Director Cotel?
Aye.
Director Lewis?
Yes.
Director McAllis?
Aye.
Director Pang? Yes. Director Ross?
Yes.
Dr. Sager?
Yes.
Director Troiani?
Yes.
Chairman Dillard?
Yes.
14 ayes and 2 absent.
Thank you, and that will be so recorded and approved. Item 4 is the public comment segment of the meeting. There are no speakers scheduled for today, so we'll go right on to item 5, which is Executive Director Leanne Redden's report. Leanne, good morning.
Good morning, everyone. And as I always begin with the cheery note of how much the state owes us. So through the end of July, the state owes the RTA for $445.5 million in a combination of ASA, AFA, and the PTF funds. The state owes us is about 13 months behind on the ASA side of the fence, 13 months behind on the AFA, and the equivalent of about 10 and a half months behind on the PTF, which is the state's match to the sales tax the region collects. The year-to-date cost of carrying that debt is $3.8 million, which now includes the 2018 working cash notes issued at the end of May this year. Because of those continuing delinquencies, I think as everyone on the board now knows, the RTA issued $150 million in working cash through a negotiated sale on May 8th. Just to give you a quick summary of that deal, it was underwritten 100% by 100% DBE syndicate, including Loop Capital Markets, Ramirez & Co., Inc., Drexel Hamilton, and Siebert, Cisneros, Schenck & Co. So we've got representation of African-American firms, Hispanic firm, service-disabled veteran firm, and a woman-owned business firm. So a good effort on our negotiated deal, which is really our sort of first step into that space. The note was issued at a true interest cost of 3.11%, which was only 60 basis points higher than the rate of a 2-year Treasury note. So all in all, a good deal. This compares favorably to the $150 million 2-year working cash note sold in April 2016 of a true interest cost of 1.43%, which is 57 basis points higher than the rate of the 2-year Treasury note. Also, on the borrowing side of fence, on June 6th, the RTA issued $139.1 million 30-year bond to fund $150 million in service board capital projects through a competitive sale. 6 bids were received. Morgan Stanley and Company offered the lowest true interest cost of 3.82%. As a point of comparison, in January 2016, we issued $95.5 million 30-year new money bond, and that had an interest cost of 3.51%. The 2018 bond is only 31 basis points greater than the interest cost of the 2016 issuance, despite a larger size and rising interest rates. So for both the working cash notes and the bond issued, S&P and Fitch affirmed our AA rating with a stable outlook. So that sort of presents a good future for us, and I think is reflected in the competitive rates that we received. The state legislature is now out of session until through November this year, and in D.C. the House is out through the end of August. And they expect they'll come back into office September 4th. The Senate is now, however, focusing on the executive branch nominations, so there's not a lot really happening sort of in our space, spending bills and some smaller legislative items. And the Government Affairs briefing memo is at your place under the stack of papers that you have there, so you can take a look at that for a summary of sort of work that's been taking place, some other minor actions that have taken place in D.C. before the August recess. So this summer, the RTA again welcomed CPS high school interns. We had 9 interns taking part in the Career and Technical Education Rising Seniors program. The 6-week program gives students a chance to really get a head start on preparing for college and their future careers. The interns, along with RTA staff, participated in several community outreach events, including the celebration of ADA Month with the Abilities Expo, Access Chicago, Active Senior Expo, and the Disability Pride Parade. That's what a couple of those photos are there. During the Access Chicago, the students also got to meet with Mayor Rahm Emanuel and Commissioner Karen Tamley of the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities. Yes, you can see the people. You can see them in those photos. And I think this was really a highlight of not just the kids' summer, but also ours. We at the staff level also spend time, while giving them actual work in the RTA offices, spend time sort of mentoring, coaching, giving them some professional exposure, and I think we actually get as much out of it as the kids do. We also might even hire a few of them back. Some of them bring some pretty cool skills that some of us even sometimes lack, especially in the technology and social media space. So that's been kind of fun. So, as I know you recall that we approved the strategic plan earlier this year, the plan makes the case for our region's funding needs. And since then, our marketing communications team have really been focused on sort of helping us execute the plan, and really on the front end has really been more of an education campaign and really helping us tell the story, share the key elements of the plan, and sort of tee up, as we've sort of all been talking about, is what our needs are and our ask is in terms of funding and support for the transit system going forward. Starting in March, the chairman and I presented to all but one so far, every council of government around the region, letting them know about how the plan was created, what its goals and strategies are that are included within it. We've also held meetings with each of the 6 county board chairs and some of their senior staff, and various members of the General Assembly, again, to kind of keep them informed and keep that education, that conversation going. We've started with our stakeholders and key elected officials across the region, but really now we're really started to sort of branch out beyond that and are now trying to talk with groups, sometimes groups that we don't normally speak to, really broaden our reach in terms of understanding what the transit issues and needs are. And importantly, make sure they understand that we shouldn't take all of this for granted. One of the groups, for example, that we've never spoken to was the Young Presidents Organization, and I spoke to them, a group of young, dynamic, actual business leaders that very much care about sort of, and somewhat took for granted some of the transit system that we have, getting their employees themselves and their employees to and from work. So we're continuing to look for those opportunities to speak to people. And I think they were able to leave with a fuller understanding of sort of the challenges we face, but also the benefits of the actual network. You may have already seen it, but one of our most important education tools that we have developed is a video that we produced, continuing sort of on our scrappy efforts to use tools, develop tools that help tell the story. So I'm going to ask for your indulgence for a few minutes to actually see this video if you haven't already seen it, and then we'll wrap up. So, yeah.
Every day, 2 million people count on us to get to school, to work, to where they need to go, and back home again.
Transit's the way to go. You don't have to sit in traffic.
Fast, convenient.
Without the bus, I'd be stuck.
Our region is built on mass transit. The CTA, Metra, and PACE were created more than 70 years ago to replace private rail, streetcar, and bus companies that went bankrupt. Private investors were replaced by government investors. And despite inheriting aging equipment, inaccessible stations, worn track, and old trains, they helped the region grow into a premier hub for freight, banking, and commerce. Today, our regional transit system is the second largest in the nation. We serve Chicago and 277 municipalities in 6 northeastern Illinois counties.
Yeah, I take the train every day to work.
It's just relaxing. It just makes things easier, really.
Public transit benefits all of us. It enhances lives by letting riders talk, text, read, work, or just zone out while someone else does the driving. It attracts businesses, jobs, and increases property values. Did you know that in Chicago, properties within 2 blocks of transit are more than twice as valuable as those further away? And public transit saves money, even if you don't ride. An average of $400 a year for rush hour drivers, because it reduces the number of cars on the road. But now, it's all at risk. Our systems are large and very old. 31% of our buses and trains are beyond their useful life. Safe to ride, but costly to maintain, and aging faster than we can replace them.
Doesn't the government pay for all that?
In theory, however, the state hasn't passed an infrastructure bill in a decade. For years, funding has been wholly insufficient to operate and maintain your transit system. There's too little local support, state dollars are rapidly diminishing, and federal funding hasn't grown significantly for years. It's time to act. It's time to invest in transit. Investing in transit means making your rides even better, with projects like an overhaul of hundreds of CTA rail cars and building a new maintenance shop to replace the one that's been in use since the 1890s. Projects like the replacement and repair of 61 Metra bridges, some made of timber that are still in use. Projects like the purchase of 412 new PACE buses to replace aging ones that have reached the end of their useful life.
Now that's getting our money's worth.
We have big goals: to deliver value on our investment, to build on the strength of our network, and to stay competitive. That's why transit needs new sources of funding.
I thought fares pay for transit.
They just raised the fare, so I don't know where it's going.
Actually, fares only cover about half of each ride. The system was designed as a public-private partnership. The plan was, because it benefits everyone, riders and taxpayers would share the cost. So each ride is funded by sales tax, the state, and a little from local governments. Problem is, those sources are not very reliable. Recent state funding cuts are one of the reasons why we've seen fare increases and service cutbacks. We need funding we can count on to keep providing the rides you depend on. With funding, we can design and build projects efficiently. Without it, projects are stalled, prices rise, and we may never leave the station. With funding, we can deliver fast and reliable service. Without it, we risk breakdowns, slowdowns, and service disruptions.
Doors closing.
And with funding, transit stays competitive, something that's getting a lot more difficult as riders today have more and more choices. Because we need transit. It's the backbone of the Chicago region's transportation network. It's the most affordable, equitable, and dependable way to ride. It's why investing in transit must be a priority.
Well, it's a priority for me. I have to get to work.
For my life, it's a priority. Transit is a priority, yeah.
I'd pay more if I didn't have to be packed in like this.
So would I.
With new funding, we can continue to do what we do best: save you time and money, getting you where you need to go. It means planning your ride will be even easier with real-time travel information, mobile payment apps, and enhanced trip planning information. We can keep ridership growing.
That's awesome.
That works for me.
So, how much are we talking?
We need a stable, dependable, dedicated annual capital investment program of $2 to $3 billion per year over the next 10 years to protect and preserve the transit system you depend on.
And how much are we investing now? Not even half. Not even half. Wow.
A new capital investment plan for the Chicago region is overdue.
I don't see how we can afford not to do it.
It's time. Time to act. Time to invest in transit. Because transit makes life better for all of us.
So that's the video. We actually had a little fun making the video too. I think it tells a compelling story. I think we had some fun over the summer. We actually released kind of a blockbuster movie trailer in advance of it to try to get some hype on that. And I want to thank the communications staffs and broader staffs across not just the RTA but the service boards as well for sort of their support and coordination in this, access to their systems in an unprecedented way than we've had before. The other great thing about this video is we purposely designed it so it can be chopped up into pieces and segments and used in social media spaces, so it should have some versatility, some utility as we go forward. We're encouraging people to share it. We can get the link. Actually, is the link on the? No, there's no slide. We can get you the actual link on that. We can send that out after this. We'll send that out to everyone's email address. We encourage you to like it, share it, that kind of thing as well. If you have any challenges with that, let us know, and we can help you through some of that as well. Okay, so just to wrap up, just in the space of continuing education, last month, the 4ED, so myself, Dorval, TJ, and Jim, were on a joint panel, and I think this is the first time anything's happened in sort of a public forum where we talked about all of our needs in a sort of conversational but I think compelling way. We used the video to sort of launch the conversation. MPC was gracious to host us in that sold out, I think it's sold out in a day event, so we're looking to take, as I keep joking with the other 3 EDs, we're going to take the show on the road, and we're going to sort of have some encore performances, hopefully, to continue that conversation. I think we want to continue to share with our partners and stakeholders on social media and encourage them to share in their networks. To date, we've reached 150,000 viewers over the social media. That's about 10 times more than our regular sort of views that we get. And so I think the video, and we're getting very good response to it. Transit agencies as near as Cincinnati, as far away as California, have reached out to us saying, this is a great video, give us some thoughts and ideas on how you put that together, who'd you work with. We want to essentially replicate that for their own agencies. And I've used it. I was at a national conference and used it and got similar response. So, the joint... It's a good way for us to tell a story, tee up the broader story, and have the 4 agencies continue to sort of share that information across the region. So with that, that's the end of my report. Happy to answer any other questions that you might have.
Any questions or comments? Director Lewis.
Lan, the video is excellent, as you say, and gets, I think, education for the general populace, but the real focal point is what you and Jeremy are doing with the legislature. So any sense as to whether or not it's beginning to melt the iceberg and help us a little bit in that regard, particularly in light of the fact that there's going to be an election in November?
I don't have a prediction on melting the iceberg, but, we'll hope, it might. We continue, though, conversations sort of this is sort of the public-facing piece of this, and as I mentioned, we've started with county board chairs and briefed everyone across the region. We're continuing and have already started talking with legislative leaders, state reps, and we'll continue to do that as we move into an election season and even post-election season to really try to. But some of this general information stuff is helpful for even the elected officials because they don't necessarily have that sort of deep understanding of some of the challenges we face. So we're using pieces of this to sort of tee up that conversation too.
Any commitments? I know we spoke with Toni Preckwinkle about this issue, and I think the response that she gave was that she's waiting for something specific to be proposed. So are we using this to maybe give people an opportunity to really kind of commit to something, or is it still kind of too early to tell?
We are asking people to lend their voices to the conversation, and as they talk, for instance, to, say, other elected officials, use any and all of these pieces of information in that conversation. In terms of specific legislative asks and issues, we are working very closely right now to sort of lay out that full legislative agenda. Bea alluded to it with the service boards. We do have a working laundry list of things. I think our hope is to pitch sort of a bigger ask that sort of ties all of these bits and pieces together in terms of a broader capital funding program that really supports us in a sustainable way going into the future. One of the challenges I think we face is a lot of times, especially when we're dealing with the state legislature, we're sort of dealing with 1 year fixes at a time and expend a bunch of political capital, both on our end as well as the elected official end, and we haven't really fixed the broader problems. And the point of the strategic plan is to sort of step back or step above all of this and recognize that it's an unsustainable funding model, and we have to have bigger and tougher conversations about how do we advance forward if we want to keep the transit system up and running.
Other questions? Just a couple of comments. And again, I echo Leanne's thanks to the staff. This is fabulous. I took this to talking about reaching out to non-traditional groups. I spoke to the Illinois CPA Society, and we previewed this video there. And their comments as financial professionals, again, they came up to me and said, hey, this in terms of economic development and numbers, investing in transit is one of the best investments you could make. And that's, again, a non-traditional but very expert group of financial advisors that we probably haven't tapped into. This video, as Susan Massal will tell you, is available to any of you if you're going to give speeches or can get yourself on any speaking panel. The staff, Tim, Susan, will tee this up for you, and the audiences that Leanne and I have shared this with have found this very, very, very interesting. I point out again when I show this, that nationally over the last couple of years in referenda, so these are not politicians, these are real voters, 70% of all mass transit referendums throughout the United States have passed, and really passed overwhelmingly. So the public gets it with respect to mass transit. We're working very closely, Michael, with the State Chamber of Commerce, with the Metropolitan Plan Commission. Leanne did a great presentation with the Service Board, the executive directors, just probably 10 days ago to the Metropolitan Plan Commission. CMAP's doing a lot of things, so we are clearly going to have a lot of allies in terms of a big, broad umbrella of a group to work with. And then last but not least, and Director Frege always loves to point out and have Bea or Leanne point out, the cost of borrowing. When we see those costs of borrowing because the state is late in their payments, let alone cutting the payments to us, that $3.8 million, as one of the Burlington Northern Santa Fe riders, of which the Tribune pointed out, at one point in time this summer, 1/3 of all the rail cars on the BNSF did not have air conditioning, and it's been a tough summer, primarily because of positive train control changes that we're going through. That $3.8 million could really help. And the video points out, they call it, if without adequate funding, you're going to have service disruptions and slowdowns. And our riders need to understand, when they're waiting at Union Station in Mass, like Leanne and I were on Monday night because of a mechanical failure of one train that slowed and stopped, halted the entire system of the BNSF and the Heritage, and Southwest service. Without adequate funding, we do a good job of moving 2 million, 1/6 of all of Illinois' population every day. But the comforts that our riders deserve and want and demand require attention with respect to funding, primarily capital funding. But without, with 1/3 of our assets being beyond their useful life, we're going to have growing pains. And everybody I see that says anything to me on my line, and they're doing it much more frequently because it's been a rough summer for the Burlington Northern Santa Fe, I tell them you must talk to your local legislator. This is all, most of it primarily driven by a lack of capital funding from Springfield. And, as this video pointed out, we'll call it like it is, the fare increase for the CTA, the first one in 8 or 9 years, is directly attributable to the cuts from Springfield. That fare increase would not have taken place if it wasn't for the delinquency and funding by Springfield. But this video is great. It's there as a tool. And again, in the Invest in Transit, our long-term report, strategic report, there is a list of priorities, and Leanne rightfully points out when you're talking to soon-to-be senators like the gentleman over here on our board, they go, well, what are you going to use the money for? You can show them where the money is going to be used at the CTA and Metro and Pace. Leanne and our staff rode the service boards hard to come up with a real list of important priority projects that we can show. If you give us the money, we will invest it wisely, and it will lead to a more comfortable ride for our riders. But most importantly, it leads to economic development, and it allows people to have a quality of life, to get home, to go to their kids' soccer games or parent-teacher nights on a timely basis with better reliability than we have today. So that's sort of my 2 cents for the summer. But again, thank you. That video is going to be critical with respect to us going forward. Thanks. Next, if Leanne is finished, we'll go on to action items. Item 6 is the approval of a consent item as it appears on the board agenda, or the consent items. 6A is the resolutions certifying the financial results for the second quarter of 2018. 6B is the ordinance establishing the estimates of the amounts available to the service boards for their 2019 through 2021 operating budgets. The required recovery ratios for 2019, as Director McAllis has carefully pointed out, and the preliminary 2019-23 capital program funds. Any questions or comments that didn't come up in the Finance Committee on that? And again, I want to thank Bee, the staff, Jill, and Director McAllis specifically for all of their hard work, on a constant, ongoing basis to keep this ship afloat. So financially, and a very good job. Can I have a motion and a second to approve these? Director McAllis moves that we approve, seconded by Director DeWitt. Is there leave for the attendance roll call? Seeing no objection, leave is granted. And,
14 ayes and 2 absent.
Those will be approved. Thank you, Madam Secretary. Item 7 is the approval of contract and expenditure items as they appear on the board agenda. 7A is an ordinance approving the correction of previously approved excess liability insurance premiums. I think, Leanne, basically the dollar amounts are changed, and some of it's just kind of putting
the total dollar does not change. It was just some line items under the different carriers shuffled around a bit, so just to make it consistent.
And Aon is our outside expert on the placing of these policies or premiums. 7B is the ordinance authorizing a contract for Metro alternative fuel locomotive study. 7C is an ordinance authorizing, and Jeremy, correct me if I'm wrong, but essentially it's the same team as always for this year. Hopefully they will really earn those fees for state consulting services. And 7D are travel expenses for board members, and I think there's one in there for staff as well. I do have one question on 7B. Tell me a little bit about the alternative fuel locomotive study. Who's doing this? Is it and I see there's a minority component or a minority vendor component, but is this a local company, and what is this study, if you know, going to entail?
I can start, and if I run out of information, Jill can pitch in. But it's federally funded. It's state monies, actually. It's federal dollars, but coming through the state. It's leftover money. Remember a few years ago we did the Green Transit Plan, and then we used it. It was specifically target planning funds on environmental improvement type things. So this is sort of the last little piece of that money, tapping that to do this study for Metra. They want to look at alternative fuels usage potentially for locomotives. It was, as federally required, it was a bid-out contract. We can't sort of specifically pick local, geographic consideration is not a standard that we can look at. It's LTK was the selected firm. We have worked with them in the past. They do have expertise in this area. They do have a local office, though, and they will be running it sort of out of the local office. Some of the experts, because it is a very specific kind of study, will be tapping resources from around the country. And there is a greater than required target on the minority component as part of that, which is a local-based firm as well.
And the reason I asked, just so the board knows, within the last month, it's really strange, and I've given Jeremy said, hey, go talk to him. A Fortune 100 company headquartered in Illinois said, hey, we do a lot of stuff in green technology, and it is based upon motor fuels and lubricants, and we have, made from soybeans, Illinois soybeans, lubricants, et cetera. And then a second firm came to me again and said, hey, how do we ever go about showing you some of the, of the lubricants that not only do we think would save PACE and CTA, but Jeremy has made contact with these, and I think one of the things we may want to tell those two entities is, hey, why don't you talk to our consultants and know that this study is going on, and if you have anything to offer, we should do that. So that's why I ask when I'm out there giving these presentations. It's amazing who comes up.
And this work is a planning feasibility analysis for Metra to sort of try to get it to the point that you're raising, that there's alternative fuels out there and more being developed, technologies evolving, for Metra to get a better assessment or a better handle on what those prospects might be going forward in the future.
Yeah, and both these are Illinois, pretty large Illinois companies. So, all right, can I have a motion on item 7, the things that are there? Director Friga moves we adopt, seconded by Director Fuentes. Is there leave for the attendance roll call? Seeing no objection. Thank you.
14 ayes and 2 absent.
Doctor. All right, that'll be that will so be reported. Item 8 is a resolution, and I do this with mixed emotions, but it's a resolution honoring our own Director DeWitt. And Audrey, if you've got it, you want to read it, please? Thank you.
Whereas Donald P. DeWitt has served as a member of the Regional Transportation Authority Board of Directors, representing the residents of Kane County since 2013. Whereas Director DeWitt is respected and admired by his fellow board members and the staff of the RTA as a dedicated and concerned director. Whereas Director DeWitt has served with distinction on the Audit and Finance Committees. Whereas, working with the Board of Directors, Director DeWitt helped oversee the prudent allocation of funding by programming dollars to needed infrastructure improvements in the region. Whereas Director DeWitt has been a steadfast guardian of the taxpayer dollars of the region and served as a diligent advocate of efficiency and cost effectiveness. And whereas Director DeWitt's public sector experience as St. Charles, Illinois mayor and a member of the community's city council provided guidance and perspective in the RTA board deliberations. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Directors of the Regional Transportation Authority hereby honors Donald P. DeWitt for his years of conscientious and dedicated service to the people of northeastern Illinois and for his commitment to enhancing the stability and integrity of the region's public transportation system for all the residents of the region. This resolution will be adopted by the board in a matter of seconds.
Thank you. I move its adoption, and seconded by Director Durante. Don, we wish you well, and you can tell us where you think you're going in a second, but you will be missed. And I don't think it's a real secret. So the Senate leader in Springfield called me and asked me, what kind of guy is this guy, Don DeWitt? And I said, well, number one, he's a very nice person. Number two, he's a great businessman who is very insightful and former mayor of St. Charles, so he has local government experience. Don DeWitt is tough, but he's a team player, and I think that's sort of what we need everywhere in any part of public life. But Don, you've been a great member and a pleasure and a delight to work with. You've been very helpful to the staff. And I certainly have appreciated your counsel publicly and privately and guidance here. And we wish you well. And if nothing else, in your new Capitol, hopefully, office, you'll have a nice plaque, the first of many, many, congratulating you and thanking you for all the things you will do for your different constituencies. So we wish you well. Thank you, Don. The floor is yours.
Colleagues' indulgence, I'm verklempt. First of all, in my letter resigning my post, as many of you know, I'll be appointed to the State Senate. I have been appointed to the State Senate to replace Senator Karen McConaughey. She's a petite woman, but she leaves very large shoes to fill, both in Kane County and in the 33rd Senate District. She's been an advocate for transportation. She's been an advocate for education, and I hope to follow in her footsteps up and down the steps of the Capitol to continue my work in both of those endeavors. To Chairman Dillard, in my letter, I stated that you were the right guy at the right time with this organization. I remember coming into the RTA board in 2013, and we were discussing budget issues and holding public hearings to start announcing service cutbacks because the group at the time couldn't come to an agreement on budget issues. It was very enlightening. It was very educating. And then Chairman Dillard, with your political acumen that you brought to this organization, at a time when Springfield was looking to dismantle this group, I think you brought all of us back to relevancy very quickly, and I thank you for that leadership. To Leanne and the entire executive staff, I want to thank you all for your service, most importantly for putting up with my silly questions and comments at appropriate times, or inappropriate times for that matter. I think the greatest compliment that you all can be served are the other service boards that show up here every fall looking to have their budgets approved, and every one of them complimentary as to the working relationships that have been redeveloped here in the mass transit industry in Chicago. To my fellow board members, you guys you ladies and gentlemen are some of the most dedicated public servants I've had the pleasure to work with. It's been an honor and a privilege to spend time with all of you on Thursday mornings. And I can assure all of you that mass transit, the RTA, and all of the transit boards will always have a friend in Springfield as long as I'm sitting in the 33rd Senate District. So with that, I will see you all in Springfield. So, thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you for those nice words, but I give the credit to Ike and the staff and all of you for anything you said about me. Anybody else have, before we actually adopt this, anybody else want to say anything to or about Don? Don, thank you. You have big shoes to fill here, and it's always nice to see alums of the RTA go on to, I don't know if the Senate's a bigger and better thing or not, but it is, and it will be so nice to have a friendly face and an office that Leanne and I and Jeremy can actually hang our coat in. So, yes, Sarah. Director
I just
Payne.
want to say that you're such a decent, smart individual, and most people don't take on what you're taking on now, and so also a patriot. Seriously, those are not easy jobs. You're You don't make millions doing these jobs, and it's hard on families, and it's really admirable that you said yes, and they picked the right person. So thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Is there leave for the attendance roll call? It's been moved and seconded. Thank you. And Don,
14 ayes and 2 absent.
we do have a very nice plaque for you. We can take maybe even a group picture when we're done. But thank you. Yeah, seriously, you have a plaque to put in your office. 2 offices you get now.
I have 1.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will move on to item 9, which is new business, and I know Director Fuentes has something he wants to raise with respect to an ADA issue.
Yes, just to let you know that the ADA Coordinating Committee met in the end of July. Director Melvin also attended, and I just want to assure the board that it's more than just bringing up ADA budgets. We actually do discuss with the service boards their goals in trying to make mainline as accessible as possible, which I'm a big advocate for, as you know. So it's nice to see these meetings and nice to hear the commitment, and obviously the biggest issue, and as always, is funding. We could do more if we had more funding, but the fact that the service boards are committed, they give extensive reports during these meetings, and I was very impressed with the CTA now trying to get elevators at all stations, and obviously it's a #1 priority with all new stations. I'll put Michael on the spot. I didn't really tell him I was going to say this, so if there's anything else you want to add, but again, I want to assure the board that all the service boards are committed to making sure that ADA access is the best that it could possibly be given our funding. So that's all I have.
Super. Thank you, Phil. Any other new business? If not, our next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, September 13th. Again, committee starting at 8:30, the real board meeting following. And everybody enjoy the rest of the summer. And with that, Director Anderson moves we adjourn, seconded by Director Lewis. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. And thank you all very much. We are adjourned.